Hello and welcome to another episode of Pizza Punk. My name is Jeff, and today we are talking punk rock. I mean, sometimes we talk punk rock on here, but today is a day to really talk about punk rock. We got really cool dude with us. I'm very excited to have him. A few housekeeping items while he waits in the digital greeting room. And you know what? We'll let him muse the question over that we ask all of our guests on the show. Is pizza punk? And if it's punk, why is it punk? And if it's not punk, why is it not punk? The answer is subjective. So while he mulls that over, we're going to just do some very quick housekeeping here. Housekeeping! I just want to shout out my friends in Voice of Doom. They have a show at the Bowery Electric. Let's pull this Mima Jam up for a minute. Hold on. They have a show at Bowery Electric. I am sadly not going to be able to make it. I was planning on going. And of course, Murphy and his law get in the way of everything. I will not be able to make it, but I really want to highlight the show. And it's free. It's free and it's all ages. Here you go. Here it is right here. It's the Holiday Slamboree. Holiday Slamboree. That's Sunday, December 18th, 2022. I believe they go on at 2 p.m. They're the first show. No, the second band. And that's at the Bowery Electric in, one of the last, there's a couple of punk clubs, not punk clubs, rock clubs, whatever you want to call them. A couple of clubs that are still left in the city in Manhattan, but nothing like there used to be, as I'm sure Dave will be able to attest to better than anybody. Dave, our guest. But yeah, definitely check out Voice of Doom. They are so fun. I don't know any of these other bands, but I'm sure they're great too. Go check out Voice of Doom. They are loads of fun. They do one of my favorite covers of Earth AD. No, not Earth AD, Wolf's Blood ever. And then the other friend I want to highlight, he's doing something. He doesn't, I did not tell him I was gonna mention this on the show, but I just want to, because my friend Ace, who's been on the show, friend of the show, my friend and friend of the show, Ace Von Johnson, you know him best as the guitar player in LA Guns, is raffling off a guitar. So let's pull that up real quick. He's going to talk about that. I don't know if I can play the video. I'll try my best here. Let's see if we can play the video for Ace. Ace, rock and roll. Okay, here we go. So this is what Ace has said, Ace Von Johnson, one of the nicest guys in rock and roll. Want a chance to win this new Epiphone Les Paul GT Standard? I'll be raffling it off for my birthday. Just watch this video for details, then enter by emailing avjguitarcontest2022@gmail.com. Can I put that in the comments? I sure can. Here, this is the link that you sent. That's the email that you send to. Is it going to let me? It's not. Oh man, it's not even going to let me do it. So you go to avjguitarcontest2022@gmail.com to potentially win a freaking guitar. Oh, it did. It went through. One winner will be chosen at random on December 27th. Please pass it on and thank you. Let's see if the video will play. Can you guys hear that?
What's up, Ace Von Johnson here. It's going to be my birthday on December 27th, so I thought, what better way to celebrate my turning 40 than by raffling off this brand new Epiphone Les Paul GT Standard. You can see it's still got the stickers and everything on, right? All you have to do to enter the raffle is donate $50 or more to any charitable cause between now and December 27th. Could be St. Jude's, could be Toys for Tots, your local ASPCA, or my personal favorite, your neighborhood Pitbull Rescue. Any organization of your choosing. And if you've already donated in the last month, I'll even accept that as well. Just send me an email with a screen grab, photo of, digital receipt, or anything comparable to avjguitarcontest2022@gmail.com in order to enter. I'll be drawing a winner at random on December 27th, my birthday, and posting it here. So please feel free to share this with your friends, tag somebody, pass it along, etc., so we can help encourage as many people to donate to their favorite causes, all in the name of rock and roll.
Hell yeah. Okay, so I don't know if that played that well. I tried my best here. I'll put a link to the thing as well in the comments. But yeah, Ace is an awesome dude. He's always doing stuff for charity, and just wanted to highlight that. Come on, you stupid thing. It's not letting me. What's up, Angus? How are you? Welcome to tonight's show. All right. We'll put that down below. We'll put that down below in the comments of this show. Without further ado, let's bring on our guest of the evening, Mr. Dave Wright, who's going by Dave W. DW. Hey,
what's
buddy.
up, Jeff? Good to see you.
How are you?
Good to be here. Good to see you.
Oh man, the pleasure is all mine. Dave and I met. We're going to answer the question in a minute, Dave. Dave and I met at the Mahoning Drive-In. We were introduced to each other by a mutual friend, Jim the Tank Dorsey. You may be very familiar with Jim, aka Jonathan Grimm, aka the Humongous Among Us, the other Ayatollah of rock and roll, and he, knowing that I love punk rock and just sort of like a YouTube historian kind of guy about this stuff, said, "Hey man, you should talk to this guy Dave. He's he saw all your favorite bands that I wasn't born yet for, and you should have him on the show." So Dave and I we chewed the fat for I don't know, say like an hour or so. We really had a really great conversation, and then life gets in the way of things, and I was like, man, in the back of my mind, I'm like, gotta get that guy Dave on. Gotta get that guy Dave on. Finally, fucking finally made it happen. I'm so glad that he's friggin' here. Dave, and I'll let Dave say an actual word. I'll shut the fuck up for once. In 1 second. Dave is not only is he an avid, taker in or appreciator, punk rock connoisseur, but he is also a cinephile like myself. This dude has such a passion for cinema and movies and the drive-in movie theater going experience. He spends so much time, or a bunch of time, at the Mahoning Drive-In Theater, which is where we met because there was this Mad Max quadrilogy marathon. Remember that? And I did. Yeah. I posted the Q&As from that on the channel. You can go watch that. But Dave was there. That's where I had met Dave at Mahoning. Okay, take it away, Dave. How are you? What's up?
I'm doing fantastic. So of course, pizza is punk rock. Pizza can be eaten in any social situation. Sylvester Stallone cuts his pizza with the scissors in Cobra as Cobra Netti. All these things add up. Of course, pizza is punk rock.
Actually, cutting your pizza with scissors is a very efficient way to cut to distribute pie, and whether it's because you're cutting it up for a little toddler or I was in a place called The Parlor in Ardsley, New York. They don't serve you. They don't cut your pizza. They give you a scissor. They give you a shear to cut your own pizza.
So I was at a party over the weekend, and for the first time, somebody brought out a pair of specialty pizza cutting scissors. I was 4 days old when I learned this, but apparently that's a thing that they make, and it's legit.
I don't know the reason why you would have to cut, or one would have to cut the pizza. Why you would have to cut your pizza, but as opposed to just having the guy roll it with the thing, the pizza cutter. But apparently, it's a thing to cut your own pizza. So,
oh, all right, yeah. I mean, I have a roller. We have a roller here at home.
So do we.
We get pizza delivered. Sometimes over a little bit of time, the cheese will stick together, and you need to recut it. This is basic pizza 101, as I'm sure you're familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And so either way, scissors or roller, I'm good to go.
You know what? It just occurs to me. I think you just nailed it on the head. That's absolutely why you need the shears are probably designed for some sort of cheese reason, like the cheese sticks. So cutting it with the shears, especially if you have brick oven pizza that comes bubbling hot out of the oven. Yeah. I wonder if the roller is less efficient in cutting than shears are, and that's why I use shears. That's the only educated guess I can make. So I don't know. I really don't know. So let's just dive right in here, because I am fascinated by all of your experiences in. Oh, I mean, you have seen a lot of incredible bands and historic shows. How did you first discover punk rock? Because can I, if I may ask, um, publicly on the internet, where your age and like the age that you were when you discovered punk rock, because I think that's sort of interesting in the fact that, like, if you're born at a certain time period, you got to experience all of this shit happen as it was happening.
So I'm 61 years old. I grew up in North Jersey. Now so I was in high school, 75 through 79. So most of my friends at that time were into Kiss, Sabbath, Zeppelin, Queen, your classic rock staples. But for whatever reason, I just wasn't connecting with me. It just wasn't for me at that time. So I'm going to say in 79, I discovered, I got into it via New Wave. The Police, Devo, the B-52s. I went to a couple shows, and I guess in the space of a year, things moved musically for me very quickly. So very soon after that, I bought the first Clash album. And from there, it was Sex Pistols and Ramones. And then again, very quickly, I heard about the punk scene in California. And again, very quickly learned about the punk scenes in the rest of the United States, whether it was Washington, New York. And also at the same time, I have to say, I was introduced to kind of roots music, Americana music at the same time. The Blasters, the Stray Cats. So I guess in a very short amount of time, there was my head exploding with all these different types of music, all these types of bands. But also early on, I guess late 79, early 1980, I really started going to my first shows, got my driver's license, and a couple of shows that really stuck out to me were seeing the Buzzcocks and the Ramones, not together, but separately down in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, at a club called Emerald City. Beautiful club. In its previous life, it was called the Latin Casino. Frank Sinatra played there at one time. Really beautiful place to see a band. And I can vividly remember kind of driving home from those two shows. It was like a lightning bolt struck. And I said to myself, my God, live music, this is something I want to chase and follow the rest of my life. It just made that much of an impression.
So I'm just going to pause you right there, because I just want to sort of marinate in that for a minute. So you're born in 61. You literally, you literally you're just there at the right place at the right time. Like, you just got to experience this stuff firsthand. And that's just so rad. Now here's a question that we've discussed this on the show before, but man, I want to hear your 2 cents on it. And maybe if you could kind of like sort of overview from because you have a musical vocabulary. You probably could dissect this really well. You mentioned New Wave. And New Wave as it relates, can you talk a little bit about, from your POV, New Wave as it relates to punk rock, as it relates to, say, record labels trying to be more commercial, and where you saw it as a consumer, and then, where you saw the tree sort of branching off, because it kind of, you have like punk rock, you have like the original punk rock esque bands, and then you have things start to branch off a little bit, and you get hardcore, you get this, you get that. Can you just talk a little bit about that, if that makes any sense of what I just said?
Well, I guess new wave was a term to make new music a little more palatable to the masses. Now, back in '79, Tom Petty's album, Tom Petty's, was it Damn the Torpedoes, was billed at the time as a new wave record.
Wow.
So I think a band that maybe a record company didn't know which way to push or pigeonhole, maybe they had a different sound, like the B-52s or Devo, obviously, or the Police, XTC. You know, these. I think they were given that broad term to push a new type of music.
Did you think that were there any of your peers who sort of, were there any of your other peers who sort of like found, I mean, I just never really heard that before, that like new wave kind of brought you into punk rock and not the other way around? Was that, would you say that was similar for others your age, or was that, you think you were unique in that?
I guess it's possible. You know, everybody's got kind of a sweet spot when they're growing up and can be open to any type of new sound. I mean, hey, a lot of my friends were into classic rock before they discovered and ran with punk, you know? So I think it's really different for everybody.
And then where did you see, again, from the ground floor, this sort of deviation into hardcore music, how things became hardcore?
Well, I guess there's two ways to look at that. You know, you had the first wave of American punk bands, you had the first wave of British punk bands. Now, when a lot of the California bands were introduced to the punk lexicon, whether it's Black Flag or the Adolescents or the Circle Jerks, a lot of people called that hardcore. So you have that kind of first wave of hardcore, so to speak, and then obviously that term got recycled with New York hardcore later in the 80s. But really hardcore was, I think Ian MacKaye first used that term when describing his peers and his friends, how much that they were into punk. He would say to people, we're not just punk, we're hardcore punk. It's a lifestyle for us. It's a music we really enjoy and want to push and celebrate. So I think that's the first time it was used in that early reference, early 80s.
What bands, were there bands that you particularly gravitated towards more than others that just really that you just immediately spoke to you?
Well, I think there was a short laundry list of bands that if you saw them once, you didn't want to miss them again. So at the top of that list, the Bad Brains. If somebody asked me the best live band I've ever seen, it's the Bad Brains from 80 to 84 or whatever. They were just incredible, just unbelievable. So thank God that somebody brought a video camera to CBGB's in Christmas 1982 and videotaped. So they played a weekend. It was supposed to be their final weekend. I don't know which night is taped, Friday or Saturday, but thank God somebody taped that live set just as a reference to how fantastic that they were. Also on that list, I would put the Cramps, incredible live band. The Dead Kennedys were not a band that when they came around you missed. They were awesome during that era, and Black Flag as well.
Let's take a look. Let's pull up you got this really sort of rad. Let me see if this will work here. Let's see. Yeah, that's the one. All right. So explain to the guests here, or the viewers here, what exactly it is that we are looking at. You sort of created a scrapbook of, well, this is a set list, but let's go to the scrapbook because I want to ask you. I figured this was a great way to sort of ask you about shows, and or maybe that we could pinpoint on specific things. Here we go. We got some Black Flag here. So basically, anytime somebody came to town, you were there to see. I mean, you were there.
Well, a lot of what you're seeing. So those two set lists are from the Minutemen.
Right.
So
Great
they
band.
one of those set lists is from the Ritz. The other one, I believe, is from Maxwell's in Hoboken. Both of which I poached off the stage after conclusion of the set. Actually, that set list right there is a rather large one. I think it's 36 inches high by 14 inches wide. So it's actually, right now, that set list is in Las Vegas. It's going to be an exhibit in the Punk Rock Museum that is opening next year in Vegas.
Yeah, you told me about this, and I started following them on Instagram. This is an incredible sort of project here, where basically, it was Fat Mike and some other sort of people have got, and there's a guy that heads up the whole thing, right? And they've gotten this essentially, it's like a rock and roll Hall of Fame, but for punk rock history in Vegas.
Correct. And so Fat Mike is kind of putting it together in Vegas. There are there's I guess 3 or 4 or 5 kind of quote unquote super collectors around the country that are gathering exhibits and sending them to Vegas. One of them is Brian Gorsinger from the Nightbirds, the great punk band out of New Jersey. Brian has
their last show is coming up.
Their last show is going to be at the House of Independence.
Man,
in Asbury Park in a couple of weeks. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. They are a fantastic band. So Brian has an amazing collection, and I know he's going to be lending some exhibits to Vegas, and he also buys, sells, actively seeks out collections and what have you. So
now the idea is to make this a permanent institution. This is not a pop-up.
Correct. It's a brick and mortar building that's under construction as we speak. So it is meant to be a permanent installation. Yes.
Angus says, I'm 2 years younger than Dave. Since I grew up in the Midwest, it took longer for punk music to reach my ears, and not nearly as many people were as open to punk. The music had not reached my area nearly as fast as the East or West Coast. Interesting. And also, R. King says, I was lucky enough to become friends with the proprietor, Joe Vex, when I worked for the Vex when it reopened in 2013. Did you ever make it out to LA to see bands that performed at the Vex? I don't know what the Vex is. I'm not familiar with that.
I've heard of the Vex. I think the Vex was actually in a Hispanic neighborhood in Los Angeles. And from what I've heard about the Vex, for bands to travel out there and actually play was a little dicey.
Yeah.
From what I've heard, but unfortunately, I never made it out to LA during that prime time. I was always jealous of Jack Rabbit, who runs the Big Takeover fans.
Oh, I know Jack. I know who Jack is.
Jack grew up in the town next to me in Summit, New Jersey. I grew up in New Providence, and I remember picking up the Big Takeover when it was literally a 2-page mimeograph fanzine. You could pick it up for free at the shows or at the record stores. And I remember in the early 80s looking at Jack's scene reports. He would go out to LA a couple of times a year and report back on the shows he saw. And I was like incredibly jealous that he was able to be out there at that time.
I interviewed him many years ago, and it's funny. So Jack is also a musician. He's a drummer. He was a drummer in a hardcore band, a lesser known hardcore band called Even Worse. That was there with all the other ones. You just never hear about it. I think they were on the New York thrash tape that was put out, the Roar cassette thrash tape. And featured members that included Thurston Moore as well as Tim Somer. And yeah.
Well, Even Worse opened for the Misfits one time.
That's right. Precisely why I initially had talked to Jack Rabid. So yeah, it's pretty rad. But it's amazing that the big takeover is still happening and that it is what it is. It's like it's an institution. It's a staple, right?
It went from a 2-page mimeograph to Barnes and Noble. What can I tell you?
It's a beautiful thing.
That's all you need to know.
That's all you need to know. And I will say, I've seen Jack at so many different shows. I never want to bother him because he's just like into the show. So I always just but I always see him. Like I said, every time T.S.O.L comes to town, I always see Jack there. Yeah. He is a avid T.S.O.L fan, and T.S.O.L used to crash at his pad and stuff when they would come out. And so I always see him at every T.S.O.L show. I think it's so funny because he's there, man. Just taking it all in.
T.S.O.L played at White Eagle Hall in Jersey City maybe 3-4 years ago. And as I was walking out, I saw Jack talking with Ron, the guitar player. So yeah, Jack's a big T.S.O.L guy.
Oh yeah, man. I don't know if I can't say for certain, but I don't think I've missed an East Coast T.S.O.L show since CBGB's in 2005. Could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I've seen every single time that they've been on the East Coast.
So I have a good T.S.O.L story.
Yeah, what's that?
So in 1982, I believe, it might have been their first time on the East Coast. I had their, Dance With Me album. I was a big fan, and here they are. They're coming east. They're going to play at Hitsville in Passaic. So I had tickets, obviously. I created a flyer to kind of put around because I wanted to spread the word.
Oh, yeah.
And so after the show, I went up to the drummer, Todd Barnes.
Todd.
Who has since unfortunately passed away. And Todd had a TSOL t-shirt on. Now, in 1982, bands did not have merch, really. They did not carry merch with them.
Except
as opposed to now, when, bands travel with 20 different t-shirts and everything under the sun. So I said to Todd, you have that t-shirt for sale? And he said to me, no, I don't, and proceeded to take off the shirt and hand it to me.
Literally gave you the shirt off his back.
Shirt off his back. That's what kind of guy he was. So
beautiful.
That was very cool.
I am a avid T.S.O.L fan. I really love this band. I love all of their work. Except maybe the Hurley record they did, Life, Freedom, and the Pursuit of Free Downloads, which they gave out for free at a time when everybody hated Napster and stuff.
Yeah.
So I thought it was kind of punk as fuck that they recorded this whole album for free and gave it out when all these bands are trying to and by the way, for the record, obviously. Love to support music and bands, and downloading is wrong, but it's just interesting at the time when free downloading was a plague amongst bands, that they were just like, fuck it. They just released the music for free. It was really interesting. It spoke a lot about them for sure. I don't know.
And their album that came out 2 years ago, I guess it was.
Trigger Complex came out in 2017. It's been 5 years.
Some of the best stuff that they've ever done.
Could not agree more. Could not agree more. I fucking love that record.
Yeah, you got to tip your hat to them. I mean, they've had obviously some different drummers over the years, but to roll with that same lineup, Mike,
40 years,
Ron,
42 years,
amazing on guitar and bass. Love that band.
There's something about Mike and Ron, the way that they sort of lock into each other. It's just they are unparalleled. And yeah, man, I'm with you. I think the Trigger, and I told that to Jack. You know, I saw them with the Bouncing Souls, I think in 2017 or 2018 on Long Island. And it was like the first time that I had seen them after that record came out. And I was like, dude, I love the new record, man. And they were getting shit. They were getting a lot of shit for that record. People were saying that record is, they're not being true to their sound or whatever. And that's the thing about T.S.O.L. They're brave explorers, man. They're so true to themselves and like what they want to do. At the height of, they put out that four song EP, and they're labeled, they're pigeonholed as like a political hardcore band, when in reality they're secretly a death rock band, and they're doing death rock songs on like Dance With Me and shit. Then they put out Beneath the Shadows. Everybody's like, oh, this sucks because it has a fucking piano player. And they're like, fuck you. This is what we play. And it's some of their best music, man. It's some of their best music. I love that record. And, I like all the songs they were trying to push are not the best songs on the record. Like Give Me More and Satellite and I Wanted to See You. Those are good songs. And those are the songs that stay in the set list. But it's other songs like You're Still the Same and what is it? This Never Lasts. And there's just all the other songs that they don't play are the best ones. Are the best ones on the album, in my opinion. I think.
I'm glad you said that to Jack, because when I was walking out of White Eagle Hall, I saw him and I went up to him and I said, "Congratulations on the new record. It's amazing." So, and
I bet he's stoked.
What's that?
I said I bet he was stoked because
you could tell he was happy to hear that.
Yeah, man. I mean, that was a real ballsy record to put out because they hadn't put out anything in like almost a decade. And, and they came back hard, man. Those albums that Disappear and Divided We Stand were like incredible solid records that, ironically sound more like the Joy Killer than they do like OG T.S.O.L, which I don't mind. I think it's a great sound. It's true. It's true to what they're doing. But you could tell that clearly Jack must have had some sort of influence on that, being that he was the guy behind the Joy Killer. And then they're doing, they do these new albums as T.S.O.L and they sound very similar. The sound had really transferred over. So, but yeah, no, T.S.O.L, great fucking band. Let me see what you have here. Let's take a look at some of your flyers. And this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to play the flyer game. Now, so what you did was, you basically, to keep track of all the shows that you went to, you cut out like the advertisements of shows that you would try to go to, right?
So you're looking in the album that has all the flyers. I think the album where I have the shows cut out is actually a different album on Facebook. Oh. But okay. So what I used to do was, in the early 80s, obviously pre-internet and phones and iPads and what have you, there were the way that you heard about shows and what was coming up was every Thursday in New Jersey, I would stop and pick up the Village Voice and pick up the Aquarian. So that's where you saw the concert ads. Village Voice was strictly New York. Aquarian was pretty much both. So that's how you would plan your weekends for the next month or so. You know, such and such is playing here, such and such is playing there. But a point that definitely has to be made. There you go.
That's your
So
first.
yeah,
That's
so
your
those
first
are
in
all
'79, right here.
those are all shows. Yeah, 79, 80. Dead Kennedys at Irving Plaza. There's the Buzzcocks and the Ramones shows that I mentioned. But one point that has to be made about that era, especially in this area, was that not only were there great American bands and European bands to see, but there were a lot of great clubs and venues
Sure.
in New Jersey and obviously New York. We're talking, some clubs only last a month, other clubs a few years, a few others are still going strong from that time frame. But there were a lot of great clubs in both states.
Like see the Capitol Theater up here, which is right near where I live. I've seen a few shows there. It's a great place. Wow. So you saw the B-52s that early in '79?
Yeah, at the Capitol. Capitol was theater in Passaic, New Jersey. I think it
different
held
different Capitol.
different
then.
Capitol. Capitol
Gotcha.
was in Passaic, New Jersey. Yeah.
Okay, we have a Capitol in Port Chester. That's also called the Capitol. Interesting.
Now the ticket on the bottom, 1981 Dead Kennedys at Irving Plaza was a bit of a groundbreaking show. I think it's the show that's a little kind of credited to bringing slam dancing to New York. I think Ian MacKaye and a lot of the Washington crew drove down for that show and were backstage. And before one song, Jello Biafra said something like, I want to introduce my friends from Washington, D.C. They're going to show you about slam dancing. And Dead Kennedy started a song, and like 15 guys came piling out of backstage, off the stage, into the crowd, and mayhem ensued. But that's what I remember most about that show. That was a pretty amazing night.
And what's going through your mind when you see all these kids rushing out? I mean, does it just make your adrenaline pump up? Do you get excited? Are you overwhelmed?
It was exciting. I mean, the music, Dead Kennedys live were pretty incredible back then. And, between them and these, these kids with their shaved heads jumping off the stage, that was a little bit new, but very intense, very exciting.
I had the pleasure of seeing the Buzzcocks right before Peter Shelley died in 2017 at what used to be the Ritz is now Webster Hall. I think it's no longer neither. I think it's just out of business now. I don't know what the deal is. What was it like seeing the Buzzcocks, man, back then at the height of their Buzzcockdom? I mean, that was when they were like that was when they're at their pinnacle, man. That time.
That band had so many great songs. All right, I'm sure you're familiar with the album Singles Going Steady.
That's one of my all-time favorite. It's technically a compilation. One of my all-time favorite records. One of my all-time favorite records of all time.
It's a singles compilation, but every song is great. Every song is a sing-along.
Everyone.
I think, at that time when I saw them in Cherry Hill, A Different Kind of Tension had just been released.
Right. Okay.
So not only were they doing Singles Going Steady, but playing songs off A Different Kind of Tension which is a great record in its own right. So, but just, fantastic musicians at, the height of their powers, playing fantastic music. So very exciting.
You know what's funny about the Buzzcocks too, and even just the Ramones and having them buttressed against each other on this paper. the Ramones, and obviously the Ramones take their name from Paul McCartney, Paul Ramone, which was his hotel check-in name. The Ramones are kind of like the Beatles when they're still wearing their leather in Hamburg, and the Buzzcocks are like the punk version of the Beatles 10 years later. They are the 1963, 1964 Beatles. And a lot of those songs on Singles Going Steady are they have a lot of Beatlistic, pop sensibility to them, in addition to their snotty punk attitude.
Well, extremely melodic, and their tunes are extremely catchy. So, yes, I agree.
And what about we have to touch on the Ramones briefly. So, literally first show is the Ramones. I mean, fuck.
I really should have added them to my do not miss list. The Ramones, they played for 50 minutes. They did, 28 songs. Amazing live, just fantastic. The issue that we had here in the New York, New Jersey area with the Ramones is that I think we took them for granted a little bit, if you can believe that, because there were times because they played around our area so much. So there were times when you would, I'll catch them next time, that type of thing. What we would pay now to see an early 80s Ramones performance, right? But, at the time, it seemed like, they were around once a month. So if I didn't catch them this time, I'll see them the next time. But just an amazing band.
Now and you had seen them. I mean, Marky was not freshly in the band. I mean, that was like his second year as a Ramone. That's amazing, man. That's really rad. And then over here we have again now Irving Plaza. Before it was called Irving Plaza, and Club 57. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Club 57 was the sort of promoter. They would put on shows at Irving Plaza, because Club 57 was actually something that was over on St. Mark's, right? Am I correct on that? They also dabbled in cinema. There was a Club 57 movie club. Mad Monster Movie Club.
Right, yeah. I mean, the Misfits were involved with that. But I'm a little, that was probably a couple of years before I started going to shows. So to be honest, I'm not, so that show, even though it's billed as Club 57, that took place at Irving Plaza. So,
well, that's what I mean, though, that they would put on Irving Plaza. Used to be Fillmore East. Then it got changed to Irving Plaza, right? And then Club 57 would come in there. Like they did the two Halloween shows in 79 and 80 with the Misfits and the Mad and Screamin' Jay Hawkins. The Mad was 79 and Screamin' Jay Hawkins was 80.
Right.
And that was Club 57, but it was done at Irving Plaza. That was the distinction I was trying to make, but I wasn't sure 100% if that was the case, but I believe that is the case. That's how it operated. So they actually had a headquarters over on St. Mark's, but they would do stuff at Irving Plaza. I think.
Yeah, I'm just not. You know what? I'm going to admit I'm not 100% on how that all shakes out.
If someone knows, let us know.
Yeah.
Angus says, the first time I saw the DKs, it was so loud that my ears rang for 4 days and my glasses were smashed in the pit.
So we could have a discussion about loudest shows as well.
What, in your opinion, that was Angus says it DKs. For you, what was one of the loudest shows that you had seen?
I think the loudest band I ever saw was the Swans.
Wow.
That was in Asbury Park, and you could kind of cut the volume with a pair of pizza scissors. That's Jesus. How loud that was. So number 2 would be Motorhead.
Wow. Okay.
I saw Motorhead at the Capitol in Passaic, and it was so loud that dust was shaking out of the ceiling tiles. It was probably asbestos and it's going to take a couple years off my life, but I can remember looking up and like seeing this dust in the lights. I was like, oh my God, this is so loud. That dust is actually being shaken out of the ceiling tiles. So yeah, those would be the two loudest bands I've seen.
So Tony Subway, Secret Subway, Tony Subway is in the crowd. He is another alumni of your age who saw the Misfits multiple times, including that Irving Plaza show we mentioned. And he is corroborating that the thing about Club 57 and Irving Plaza, the idea that they would come in to Irving Plaza, put on shows. So Irving Plaza was its own separate thing, but Club 57 would do shows at Irving Plaza. That is at least
interesting. All right.
So there you go. I see here you saw, man, Stiff Little Fingers, another incredible band, Irish band, right? Aren't they from Ireland?
Yep.
Man, Suspect Device, fucking Wasted.
Alternative Ulster.
Wasted Life.
Yeah.
One of the best anti-war songs ever written by any band is by Stiff Little Fingers, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
And you saw them with the Fast, which was a band that another one of those sort of footnote bands that they didn't really leave a good fossil record in terms of recordings. But if you went to New York shows, you probably knew about the Fast. They were quite popular on that circuit, right? The Zone Brothers.
I remember them. I remember them playing around. I don't remember too much about them. Yeah. But definitely was part of that early New York scene.
I see down here, I don't know if you made it to the show, but I see it mentioned the Specials and the Go Gos. That must have been what a bill that is right there.
Yeah, the second Specials album, More Specials, had just come out. And yeah, I really regret that I did not see the Specials before that. I know they played at the Hotel Diplomat, which was a venue for a couple of years in New York. Maybe they played somewhere else as well, but I think that was my first time seeing the Specials. Yeah, I love them, and I still see them to this day. If they come around, I just go.
I know Madness, another band, another contemporary ska band of that time. Madness they were trying to do their 40th anniversary tour, and they were supposed to play in the city, but the it was around 2020, and that put a damper on things. So I don't know if they ever made up that show. But that is it's another band that I wish, or that I would want to go see. I also see here the Stranglers, who that they're one of the early. I mean, they started in '75. And their drummer just passed away. He was like 10 years older than the rest of the band. He was like in his 30s when they started the Stranglers.
Jet Black, just passed away.
R.I.P.
Their keyboard player passed recently as well, David Greenfield. Interestingly enough, on maybe the previous page, Stranglers played a show in West Orange, New Jersey, at a club called Creation. Very small club, and that's where I met. We have a friend in common, Lenny Splendorio.
Yeah, Lenny.
That's where I met Lenny.
Shout out to Lenny.
Shout out to Lenny. It was, I was like, where do you live? I'm in Union. I was in New Providence, so that's really when I started going to hang out in Union with Lenny, and for years we would go to shows together with Lenny and the Union crew. And I still see Lenny time to time. He plays drums with the Accelerators.
Right.
So I just saw him with the Accelerators a couple of weeks ago.
Lenny is a great guy. Now, what's funny is when we were exchanging information at the Mahoning, I was entering your email, and your email was already in my Gmail, and we were going, what the fuck? How is this possible? We've never met before, complete strangers, just having this casual conversation. And I'm going, Dave, we've crossed paths in the past. As it turns out, Lenny had CC'd us all. I know this is such exciting information, but it's just funny. Lenny had CC'd us like 10 years ago on some email, and you got added to my address book or something, or my Gmail recognized it. Because I don't ever delete an email. I keep every piece of email that I have since 2008. I have every single email that's ever come into my email address. And I'll tell you, it's been very useful. I'll tell you that's like a memory bank without having to remember everything. And there's been many times where I need to pull something out of the old Gmail and it comes up. But I thought that was really funny.
The bottomless Rolodex.
It's the bottomless Rolodex. And, the thing about bottomless Rolodexes here's the thing you have to remember. Bottomless Rolodex is sticky. And you know what else is sticky? Stickers. And the stickers that we have on our channel are produced and made by riotstickers.com, who sponsors this channel. And we are doing a special promotion with riotstickers.com. So excited to tell you about it. If you need stickers, 3 inches by 3 inch stickers, you need to put an image on your stickers. Look no further than riotstickers.com. They can do what you need with all your sticker needs. They're UV coated. They're printed on vinyl, so they're solar proof and they're waterproof. They even do banners. Look at this banner behind me. That was printed up by them. They do magnets, buttons, and pins, bottle cap openers. I mean, they do it all, man. So anyway, let me tell you about this deal that we're doing with riotstickers.com. You can get 1,000 stickers for $79 when you go to riotstickers.com/Frumess. That's the only way you're going to get this deal. You can't get this deal anywhere else except for that link. You go to riotstickers.com/Frumess, FRUMESS. Link is in the description below. That's 7 cents per sticker. Riot, Sharpie Riot, he must be insane to be giving out such a good deal like that. Let's play the 60-second video from the guy in Less Than Jake, and we will be right back with more Pizza Punk with our good friend here, Dave Wright.
Posters and promo cards, there's nothing we can't print for you. From stage backdrops to bass drum heads, we can print on shirts, we can print on hats, we can print on pants. Cheap prices and high quality, quick turnaround times and free shipping. We also offer free artwork support, great customer service, and so much more. We are the bomb. Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb.
Oh yeah, Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we're the bomb. Okay, so you guys know where to go for that stuff. Now, let's get back. Let's look at some more of these crazy flyers, these crazy advertisements that Dave said. Okay, so we have some good ones here. You got Iggy Pop. What year? Okay, I know my Iggy Pop stuff pretty well. What year is this Iggy Pop show?
I believe that's 1982.
Okay, so that's right around the time of Zombie Birdhouse. And in his band, 82. I think Clem Burke had just done a tour with him, Clem Burke of Blondie fame. And he had Ivan Crawl maybe in his band. Zombie Birdhouse some of the songs on Zombie Birdhouse were written by Blondie's Chris Stein. And I'm trying to think who else. And that also that was also around the time that he did a track for the Canadian animated film Rock and Rule. called Pain and Suffering, which you can find on Zombie Birdhouse. That would have been a very weird, interesting, wonderful time to have seen Iggy Pop.
So that show took place at a really fantastic venue, the Meadowbrook Ballroom in Cedar Grove, New Jersey. The Meadowbrook has been around since the 30s, the 40s. It was a venue that hosted big band remotes. Big bands would play. They would broadcast it all over the country, live from the Meadowbrook Ballroom. Beautiful venue. I believe it's still standing. It's a church now, but fantastic venue.
That's awesome. How was Iggy on that at that show? Was he must have been really wired or strung out and crazy.
To be quite honest, I don't remember a lot about that show. I'm sure he was crazy as usual. It probably wasn't too long before the shirt came off. But to be honest, I don't remember a lot of details about that one.
He released a book called I Need More, and he had just gotten out of a mental institution of some kind or psychiatric facility. I was trying to get his career back. I was one of the lowest bottoms of Iggy Pop's career, one of them. First one probably occurred in 74, 75, and then again in after the David Bowie period. Still, what a great wild time to have seen Iggy Pop. So many bands here. We have X from LA, another incredible band. I got to see X once at Irving Plaza, man, but you got to see them like in their heyday. That was also an 82 show.
I'm going to say yes. They were kind of another favorite of mine. I had seen the I heard of them, had the records. That great documentary came out, The Unheard Music,
right,
about X. And for the most part, they were another band that when they came around, I went to see them because I was a big fan.
Man, my worship of X's really ends after the first 3 albums. Not to say that they didn't do anything great after them, but that was like in the same way that, like, listen, I love and appreciate every era of the Ramones, but really the first 4 albums are like immaculate for me. And it's the same thing with X. I've tried listening to some of the later ones. They just don't really click. Every song on every record from Los Angeles to Wild Gift to especially on Under the Big Black Sun is just divine. Like beyond.
So Under the Big Black Sun, X did a signing in New York on 8th Avenue, maybe. I can't really remember the name of that record store, but I have my Under the Big Black Sun autographed by all 4. They did a signing in New York.
Oh,
when that record came out, yeah.
They've been doing reissues, and I had to have them. I had to have all 3 of. I have all 3 of them. I have the reissues for Los Angeles, Wild Gift, and Under the Big Black Sun, which are it's gold foil vinyl. And I just had to have them. They're just such great records, man. That cover. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, are you a fan of the Knitters, their side project?
I've listened a little bit. That's basically X without what's his face, Billy Zoom.
Dave Alvin plays, and I think they have a stand-up bass player in the band as well.
And it's weird too because didn't Alvin also sort of join the reformed X as well?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's super weird that they're like the Knitters, but also like the reformed X without Zoom.
Yeah, that was it was a bit of a strange time. As much as I love Dave Alvin in the Blasters, it was kind of a weird fit not having Billy Zoom. That's big. It's a different style and big shoes to fill,
that his guitar playing is kind of irreplaceable. It's just it's just so, it's funny to go back to T.S.O.L for a minute. We were talking about T.S.O.L. You know who's kind of the secret weapon of T.S.O.L that no one really like dwells on is actually Mike Roach, the bass player. His bass playing, man, if you listen, there's some great early T.S.O.L shows where the cameraman is standing way too close to the bass amp. So you really get to hear everything that Mike Roach is doing. And he is, not to take away anything from Todd Barnes' incredible drum parts, but, Mike Roach he's doing so much and you don't even realize it. Like, that's what's so funny. It's like sometimes like the best musicians, like if they're doing their job correctly, you don't even notice that they're doing their job.
Yeah.
And he's driving that sound. And I would say the same goes for Billy Zoom, man. As a guitar player, no less. Usually, and he's doing, he's jumping. It's kind of like John Christ from Danzig too. He just jumps from rhythm to lead to rhythm to lead. And he's kind of the backbone of the sound in a way. I can't explain it. I mean, I don't know. Just really, really integral to X's sound, Billy Zoom.
Yeah, there's certain members of certain bands that are quote unquote irreplaceable. Even if you replace them, just not the same.
Just not the same. Well stated. You also got UB40, the Go Gos. Now, the Go Gos is a weird thing because the Go Gos are, if you ask anybody on the street, they'd be like, oh, the Go Gos are a new wave band. But the Go Gos kind of have like, they have like West Coast punk rock roots.
Yep. So a lot of those shows there took place at Hitsville, which was in Passaic, New Jersey, just a few minutes away from the Capitol Theater. Probably the closest club vicinity wise to me when I was growing up and of that age, probably maybe 40 to 45 minutes away from me. And as you can see, I spent a lot of nights at Hitsville.
Oh, wow.
A lot of many great bands. I think that show
Senders, you got the Senders there.
I think that show by UB40 was their first American show.
Wow.
The Go Gos was a very early show. I believe the We Got the Beat single was out. I don't think they had an album out yet.
You got the Flesh Tones with Shrapnel, which is Danny Ray's band before he became the Ramones producer extraordinaire.
Yeah, with Joey's brother, Mickey.
Wait, Mickey was in Shrapnel. I did not know that.
Oh, I'm thinking of the Rattlers.
The Rattlers. Maybe
Shrapnel.
Daniel Ray was in the Rattlers too, but I know he was in Shrapnel was his band.
Shrapnel, yes. They used to wear like the combat gear on stage.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sure Johnny Ramone liked that. What was it like seeing? I mean, you got the Jam. What about Peter Tosh? That's a trip right there. Must have been interesting.
So those two shows were at the Ritz. Now, when people ask me, hey, if somebody were to ask me, Dave, what was your favorite show of all time? I say it's that Jam show at the Ritz.
Really?
I am a huge Jam fan. They might be my favorite band. And,
Rock on, okay.
And that was the first time I saw the Jam. Sound Effects, their album Sound Effects, I believe had just come out. And the crowd and the band were both just on fire. Just a fantastic show. Just loved it. Amazing.
That's awesome. That's great. That's really great. That stuff stands out in your mind. All right, let's move. We got the Rockettes there. That has what's his face? Barry Ryan was in the Rockettes. I don't know if he was in the Rockettes at that time. And yeah, that's rad. Wild Willie Barrett. Johnny Ottaway and Wild Willie Barrett. Let's keep going. Okay, what do we have here? Joe Jackson, the Ramones, the Clash in the movie. What is this one? This bottom one I can't see here. Oh, Rude Boy. They're in the movie Rude Boy.
Yeah, so they had screenings of Rude Boy, the Clash movie, when it came out, and they had a couple screenings at the Capitol Theater, and in a theater that had 3,000 seats, there were about 12 of us for that screening.
Wow.
But it was fun.
You know, I got to tell you another band that obviously gets pigeonholed as new wave, but has punk roots. In fact, was greatly admired, famously admired by John Lennon, the B-52s, who are just a really extraordinarily interesting band that a lot of people, I feel like, just don't really, if you listen to that first album, man, it obviously has Rock Lobster on it, which is one of their great songs, but they just are, what an interesting, weird sort of band that's just really great. Those shows must have been pretty interesting.
Yeah, I can't say I saw an early show from them. Capitol Theater is a big venue, so
Sure.
That was kind of a headlining thing for them. So I did not see them in their club phase, but yes, a fantastic band, very unique sound that they really made their own. With the girls singing, and obviously Fred Schneider was a great personality. And Ricky Schneider, great on guitar.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he passed away, I think fairly early on in their career. But
like 84, 85, he passed away.
Yeah.
And then the drummer, Keith, he took over as the guitar player.
Oh, okay. All right.
And then they got a new guitar player, and then he retired from touring with them. And it was just the three of them now. I guess they're doing their farewell stint and whatever. And now they're like, it's just they started in that punk scene, but now they are, I don't even know what you call them. But they're always considered one of the great classic new wave bands, right? End of the day.
For sure. I mean, people look at them as mainstream right now, but
right.
That's certainly not where they came from. And they had some huge hits over the years, which propelled them to great things.
On this next record, I see that you have the B Girls, Cynthia from the B Girls, who used to go out with Stiv Bators. Interesting band. You got Susie Sue and the Banshees. Obviously, the thing I really want to ask you about, and I want to ask you about in detail, is this show right here, the Misfits, the Necros, and Black Flag. But before I can ask you about that, let's talk a little bit about the Cramps and what you're. And also the other Professionals, which is, of course, the band that Steve Jones and Paul Cook did after the Pistols, and they actually, the Professionals, they were in a movie, a Lou Adler movie called The Fabulous Stains, which was sort of like an early punk movie, I guess, or a punk movie, early 80s punk movie. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, the Cramps, just an amazing live band, great on record, but even better live. I know they played they're obviously very popular in New York. That's where they lived. That's where they played quite a few shows. Their record, Live at the Peppermint Lounge, is, I think would be considered an EP, but it's a stone cold classic.
Was Kid Congo Powers in the band when you saw him?
Yes. Yeah, I never saw them with Brian Gregory, unfortunately. But Kid was in the band, obviously. As far as frontmen go, I mean, what can you say about Lux Interior, one of the greatest ever? Poison Ivy on guitar, just incredible player, incredible look. And then on drums, you had Nick Knox.
Nick Knox, yeah.
With You know, the black hair, sunglasses, black slacks, beetle boots, and a cigarette dangling out of his mouth. Just playing, you know, like he doesn't even care, but just laying down these beats. Just a fantastic live band. Just wonderful.
And you know, it's funny. I don't know. Well, let me get your take on this. I've always kind of wondered why, you know, the Cramps never had. Maybe it's just because, you know, the Cramps always considered themselves. You know, I've heard Poison Ivy talk about this in interviews. And Lux too. That they're kind of like everybody else. They kind of saw themselves as the only band really playing real rock and roll. Like to them, rock and roll was music from the 50s and the 40s, whatever. And the idea of rock and roll being sort of a euphemism for fucking, essentially, which is how rock and roll started as a slang in that kind of way. And, you know, I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to me that they're like, you know, their sound and their music, they don't have a bass player. It's generally two guitar players. And I always wondered why that was. And I always just assumed it had to do with something about some sort of sound from the 50s that they were trying to capture. And I was wondering if you had any sort of opinion or idea as to why that they were a two guitar band.
Well, you know, I would just say that they were extremely insular in that this was Lux and Ivy's world, and this is the way they wanted to mold it and present it. And that was it. You know, this crazy amalgamation of rockabilly and science fiction movies and, you know, that whole lifestyle. You know, they had their vision that meant everything to them. And I don't think to be honest, they didn't worry about other people's opinions of, hey, we should sound like this. We should have, you know, how come we don't have a bass player? They didn't care. And I don't think their sound suffers for it. I think.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely.
They're, you know,
it's
that's
unique.
Exactly. That's one of the things that make them extremely unique. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, essentially, even if you really want to get down to the brass tacks, you know, if you have a rhythm guitar player doing some sort of rhythm thing, I mean, if you didn't want to have a bass player, I guess you don't really need one. You know, there's no rules when it comes to music. I just never heard, no one's ever given me a good reason as to why they chose to not have a bass player. And I just always assume, I mean, what you said makes a lot of sense. And, you know, I just chalk it up to that. And it's sad that she never, you know, he passed away. He had a heart. You know, it's funny. I remember when he died and there was a whole thing online. A lot of people thought he was faking. A lot of people thought that was a joke at first, that I think he had a heart attack, had a heart failure. And people thought that was Lux Interior playing because they had a sort of a dark tongue-in-cheek sense of humor about him. And that he was still alive, that he was going to come out and be like, haha, just kidding. And that was not the case.
Yeah. You know, after Lux passed, I'm a member of, there's a couple of Cramps Facebook groups, and people, you know, bring up, you know, how's Ivy doing? Occasionally, every couple of few years, maybe a picture will come up with her at a party or whatever. But it's very clear that, you know, she wants to maintain a very private life at this point.
Yeah.
You know, would I love to see a definitive documentary about the Cramps that's come up before? I mean, that's something I think we'd all love to see.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know, a biography with her input, but
or
you know,
a tribute show where she plays a little guitar and people take turns singing the Cramp, not billed as the Cramps, obviously, but maybe just like some sort of ode to the Cramps. I kind of wish they would do something like that. It's a shame that they don't.
But you know what? At this point, she she maintains that, need for privacy, and it's just
Yeah.
something we have to respect at this point.
Oh, for sure.
I'm, obviously glad she's still with us and hope she's doing well. And I think that's where we kind of have to leave it with her.
Yeah. I'm sad that I never got to see them live. And it's funny, I was making plans to do that. I was like, I was waiting for them to come to Chicago, and then I heard that terrible news. And then that crazy idea that he was still that he might have still been alive or something. I was like, no one could definitively confirm that he had passed away. Crazy situation. Shocking. Now this show with the let's take some comments real quick.
Well,
let's see here.
Angus is saying, when I saw the Cramps, they had a bass player. I believe later on in their career, they had Fur Dixon, who I believe was playing bass at that time.
Okay.
So, for a shorter period, I think they did have a bass player.
Oh. Everyone hates my hometown. He had a bad experience from playing with Black Flag. Hey man, after reading Stand By, Get in the Van, and hearing about half of the insanity that Henry Rollins and Black Flag had to put up with just going from town to town, I'm sure that stuff happened, man. I'm sure people, it's what happens when you're on the road and doing a creepy crawl. Bad experience, bad things happen, or crazy things happen in certain towns. You just go, hey, I'm never gonna come back here.
Hey, those guys were the Johnny Appleseeds of American punk.
Yeah, man.
Driving around and getting in the van and spreading the music.
Yep.
In the towns that didn't care for them, didn't like them, wouldn't put up with them, and they continued to blaze that trail. So
they established touring like them. Minor Threat did that too. D.O.A. There was no routes. There was no way to travel the country and book shows and play music. These guys are just out there doing that,
For
Ramones,
sure.
Ramones too.
The Ramones, Dead Kennedys.
Kennedys, yeah.
But Black Flag was really the band that got in the van and went from small town to small.
They went to all the nooks and crannies. They went everywhere and anywhere. It wasn't like they were, in general, when you think about touring, you have to hit major markets or major cities where, you're going to make enough gas money to get to the next place. You're not going to want to hit every little dingleberry on the bottom belly of America, because what if a promoter doesn't pay? There's a lot of reasons there's a lot of risk. But Black Flag's one of those bands that just, they went everywhere.
Drove across the country multiple times when, that was not easy for a alternative or especially a punk band to do. So, Trailblazers, you have to tip your hat to them.
Absolutely. Now this show, which I think this show is had to be from 1982, I believe. This Misfits Necros Black Flag Christmas show at Hitsville in New Jersey, which you can hear on many bootlegs, exists. First of all, let's talk a little bit about the Misfits, because we haven't spoken about them up to this point. Now, not only are you of the age that, you got to see all these incredible bands, what do you remember of the Misfits, or first hearing about the Misfits, or the Misfits reputation? When did they get on your radar?
Well, the first time I saw the Misfits was in October of 1981. Their Halloween show at the Ukrainian Hall in Manhattan, just off St. Mark's Place. They played with the Necros. So obviously I was big into the music by that point, and I had heard of them. I'm guessing that I probably had a couple of their singles by that point, and had at least heard about their live show and reputation. in fanzines, what have you. So that was my first chance to see them live. And one thing I remember about that show is that before the show started and in between bands, the Misfits set up a white bed sheet on the stage, and they had a 16 millimeter film projector, and were showing horror movies projected on the bed sheet. So that was pretty cool. So that was, Halloween weekend, or I think it was October 30th, that show. So that was my first Misfits show. I think generally speaking, the Misfits did not extensively tour. They did not play a lot of shows. So I think the consensus was among myself and my friends, when the Misfits had a local show back then, original Danzig era, it was kind of an event, and it was an event that you probably did not want to miss if at all possible. When they took the stage, they were a little larger than life, and they looked like superheroes. What band looked cooler on stage? Their songs, for the most part, were anthems and sing-alongs to boot. So the crowd loved them. Generally speaking, again, their shows were not overly long. I would guess those early shows, none of them lasted more than an hour. I can remember them using cheaper guitars and having a lot of equipment break. Bass would break, the head would break off the bass. Somebody would bump into something, or things got broken. So generally speaking, the shows didn't last that long. But, like I said, every Misfits show was an event, and you probably did not want to miss it. So the Christmas Day, 1982. Now, if you notice in my scrapbook, it says Misfits, Necros, Black Flag. Now, I cut out and added the Black Flag because they were not announced for that show. The Black Flag was in New York. Obviously, they're good buds with the Misfits. So they drove out for the show from the city. Now, I have never been that guy who walks into a venue 10 minutes before the headliner goes on. I'm the guy who walks in 20 minutes after doors open. So that day, after celebrating Christmas with my family, yes, Mom, I'm really going out to a show tonight. So I remember walking in the club and seeing amps on stage with the Black Flag bars on them, and I was like, "What is?" And I think I saw Robo walking around, and it became evident very quickly that, like, oh my God, Black Flag is going to set up and play. Which obviously they did. Now, obviously, I could not get on my cell phone and call all my friends and say, "Get down here, Black Flag is setting up." So there was not a huge crowd there when Black Flag played. But the other thing that was great about that show is that when Black Flag played, the Misfits, some of the Misfits and the Necros were at the front of the stage, just screaming and yelling the lyrics. And the same thing when the Misfits played, Henry and some of the guys were on the front row just yelling and screaming. I think there's a couple of pictures where you can see Henry at the front of the stage. But that was a pretty unforgettable night. What a great show.
Do you remember? Okay, do you remember Jerry and Doyle punching kids' legs when they were trying to stage dive over Jerry and Doyle in the front? or when Jerry and Doyle were up front against the stage, were there people? Did people kind of back away a little bit because they just didn't want to be near Jerry and Doyle because they were spiky?
Well,
And
yes, I mean, obviously those guys are intimidating, especially when they're in the crowd. In fact, on a related note, so that was Christmas Day. Let me see, was it earlier? I think the week before, Black Flag played a show at the Peppermint Lounge in New York City. Saccharine Trust opened. And I can vividly remember the Misfits came out to support Black Flag at that show. Now, the stage at the old Peppermint Lounge on 45th Street was a very high stage, like maybe 5 feet, with a checkerboard cement floor. And at the foot of the stage, you had Jerry, Doyle, Glenn, and you had Earl Liberty from Saccharine Trust, who is like 6'4" and kind of scary looking, very intimidating in his own right. So yeah, that crew and the Misfits were in full gear. So you had that whole crew up against the stage, front of the stage, while Black Flag played. So there was nobody stage diving onto those guys, I can assure you. But no, I do not remember anything like that going on at Hitsville.
This guy Mike Mindless, rest in peace, from the Skulls, who he was telling me, I think it was the same show, but he mentioned, it was just a detail that I always could never corroborate, but always wanted to. It's a detail that always stuck in my mind when I spoke to him many, many years ago, where he said that, that if someone tried to stage dive over Jerry and Doyle, that one of those guys would just get annoyed because they're just trying to enjoy the show and reach up and punch it, jab at somebody's legs, like, don't jump over me. I always thought that was funny. And I believe it was at that show. So that's why I was curious to hear, it's always, that's the funny thing about this stuff too. It's always so interesting to hear everybody tell how they remember, what they remember versus what someone else remembers. It's so interesting in that kind of way. So was Robo was with Black Flag still, and the Misfits, were they using T.S.O.L on drums? I wonder if Googie was out of the band by this point. I'm trying to think.
I know I saw Todd play with them at Irving Plaza that same year, but I believe that was June. But I don't remember. I can't picture who was on drums.
What do you remember from that show, the Irving Plaza show with the Beastie Boys and T.S.O.L playing drums for the Misfits? Do you remember anything about that?
So I remember the front of the venue had these great 2 foot by 2 foot Walk Among Us promo posters. So I grabbed one. And when I took it off, it ripped the corner. So unfortunately, I sold that over the years, but I did grab that at that show. Yup, Todd played drums. That was the show that I think Jerry and Doyle wore the Star Trek shirts. So that looked pretty cool. Necros were fun as always. Don't remember a lot about the Beastie Boys. I saw the Beastie Boys 2 or 3 times before. Unfortunately, I never saw them as a rap band, but I saw their punk band a few times. And
Pollywogs do.
Right. To be honest, they were fairly unremarkable, But I can remember when License to Ill just came out, and they scheduled a show at the Ritz, and I thought, boy, that'd be fun to get tickets to. And the next day, gone. They were gone, and they were on the rocket ship to stardom after that. But
isn't it kind of funny? I think it's so funny how a band could, they're like every other band doing the hardcore, the hardcore formula, and then they do something so different. They jump over to, the hip hop side of things and explode as a result. Isn't that interesting?
Total 360. But you take those guys, they're so creative, so inventive.
Oh
yeah. Fantastic band.
You saw the Misfits with Even Worse and Kraut as well at Irving Plaza?
Yep, that was that was the same year. I think that was earlier in the year. I don't remember, I guess it was kind of a hometown show with obviously Kraut and Even Worse. Don't remember anything in particular, bad, good. It was a fun show. Irving Plaza, always a great venue to see a band. Happy to see that I don't know that they're scheduling anything there now, but up until a couple of years ago, they were active. But another good show at Irving Plaza.
Let me ask you this about Irving Plaza while we're here. So to play Irving Plaza was a pretty, that was a pretty good feather in your cap as a local act on some level. Would you say so?
I would, but at the same time, back in that era, Irving Plaza was booking bands probably 5 nights a week. So they were booking, so there was a lot of bands coming through there, both touring and local.
Sure.
But yes, that's where you want to play. If that's what you want to aspire to, if you're starting out in a small club, is to play a great mid-sized venue like that with a great reputation.
Okay, I'm about to really bother the shit out of you with this one, so I hope you're ready. There's a very infamous show on your flyer roster here that I'm dying to know if you remember anything about. Super interested and important to hear what you have to say if you remember anything. The Misfits, The Undead, and Heart Attack at the Ritz in 1981. This is the only time that The Undead opened for the Misfits. Obviously, Bobby Seale had a very famous falling out. With Glenn Danzig, the first Nine Toes Later was supposed to come out on Plan 9, and they got dropped because of something that Tim Sommer had written actually about The Undead. I'm just curious to know if you any details about that show and what occurred.
Well, that show was in December of 81. It was on a Thursday night. And I remember Bobby Steele was in the balcony of the Ritz, and Danzig spotted him and was screaming at him. Now, I don't know that that's ever come out on record or has been corroborated anywhere, but that's what I remember about that, because it was, I was kind of taken aback, I thought it was kind of shocking.
So did you see Bobby Steele throwing beer at the Misfits? I
thought that happened. I thought I read that happened at Irving Plaza. And didn't Misfits send a roadie up who threw him down a couple of flights of stairs or something like that after that happened? So
do you remember any alternative lyrics to any songs that the Misfits played in honor of Bobby Steele?
That's a possibility, but that's not something I remember.
What do you remember about Heart Attack? Do you remember anything about Heart Attack from that show? It's super young Justin Allen, right?
Yep. I saw Heart Attack a few times, CBGBs. Yeah, super fast song. Well, they had their God Is Dead EP. That was their record. Very fast, very. I think there was just three. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't. I thought Heart Attack a 3-piece or a 4-piece. I'm not
That I
sure.
don't know.
But very fast, and Jesse, even at that young age, was a great frontman. One other thing, I pulled down an Undead poster from the Ritz that night. It's in my scrapbook, and it says The Undead live at the Ritz, December 17th. And it's just interesting that it doesn't say the Misfits, and that I don't think any. I think that was the night of the Four Horsemen poster, Misfits Four Horsemen poster for their show at the Ritz. I don't know how many of them they printed up. I don't remember seeing any, but I did pull down that Undead poster, and I still have it. And it's still you can see the picture of it in my scrapbook, and it may be one of a kind. I have never seen another one.
So I think that show that was a last minute addition. One of those bands got added on, and initially it was not. I've never seen that poster either. I'm trying to find it right now. I don't think they weren't originally supposed to do a show together. So you didn't know at that time that there was sort of like there was no sort of whatever scuttlebutt that the Misfits and the Undead were rivals or angry at each other or had animosity.
Well, if I would have known about that, I would have read it in a fanzine. But I don't recall like going in thinking, oh boy, there's bad blood between Bobby and Glenn. But obviously I walked out with that feeling, you know?
Sure. Wow. So you don't remember, Bobby doing any kind of heckling?
Yes. Well, he
did.
was in the balcony, and he was getting into it, yelling things at the stage, I guess. And that's when Glenn laid into him from, I don't recall specifically what was said either way, but I do remember the back and forth between the two.
Now, another thing I'm really curious to hear about, and again, like information, the way information travels at that time is very different from how information travels now. When you hear about something that crazy that happens at a show, you could just read a Facebook post about it. Somebody from the band will issue a statement directly onto the internet and be like, "This is what happened, and I hate blah, 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 blah," that sort of thing. Or somebody posts a video with their cell phone. Back then, I mean, it was a lot different. You had, as you keep bringing up zines, we've talked extensively about how this was a form of underground media for anybody who wanted to know what was going on in these communities. I'm curious to know what you heard about in regards to the Misfits getting into a whole thing in San Francisco when they played. Jello Biafra was there when Doyle hit a kid over the head with a guitar, and that whole kerfluffle, because eventually that information had to have made it back to the East Coast. And frankly, the same for the grave robbing thing in '83. So I'm curious if if the legend of these sort of incidents would, today it's like this punk lore that everybody kind of knows, but back then what you might have gleaned or remembered about it when you heard about it.
Well, back then, news from Los Angeles, the West Coast, I would pick up on that from reading about it in Flipside, the famous fanzine out of Los Angeles area. There was also Slash, the newspaper fanzine, Maximum Rock and Roll. Now, do I remember specifically where I read about that incident? I do not. However, it was certainly news at the time and certainly got its share of ink in the fanzines, because that was a fairly big story back then. The violence and the attack at that show.
Wow. And what about the grave robbing? Did that make its way back to like the East Coast, the tri-state area?
I don't remember as much specifically about that. Was that obviously the trip when they met Vampira and did the record store appearance, or is this something different?
That was in '83 with the Necros in New Orleans.
Oh, right. Yeah. I'm going to say the San Francisco incident was much bigger. Because there was just so much more fanzine coverage out of California than New Orleans. I don't know how we would have heard about it coming out of New Orleans, to be honest.
So that's so interesting, man. I mean, it's really interesting. Like, and it's funny how there's never really been a documentary about the spread of information via fanzines in that time. I feel like that would make for such a great doc to sort of explore how that worked. And it's a shame that somebody who I'd like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a filmmaker who I'd want to see. We didn't even talk about movies. We're already an hour and 41 minutes in this bet. We'll have to have you back for something movie related. Let's talk real quick about the Bad Brains, and we'll have to have you back on again in the future, because there's just so much to go over. But the band that you've seen a lot of is the Bad Brains, man. And I am in awe of this band. Why are they not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Why do they not get their due? I know that, obviously Black Flag is a very influential band in many ways, and so are the Dead Kennedys. But I feel like from a sonic perspective, there's nobody more influential on hardcore music than the Bad Brains, man. I feel like they are, that's it, man. They start in the same way. They are as influential to hardcore music as the Descendants were to pop punk and melodic punk of the 90s and emo music that would come later, I'm just curious your thoughts on all that.
Well, I guess part of it is touring. All right. I know when they did go to California, they made a huge impression, and anyone who saw them live swore by them. And it was very much the same here on the East Coast. But I guess, just did not have that exposure for the most part, or good exposure in Middle America. I know, they had some issues in Texas.
Oh yes, the infamous Big Boys incident, for sure.
Yeah. So, I guess their lifespan at their peak. When I reference them as an amazing live band, I usually, I say 80 to 84. I don't know that they could match what they did during those years in their later years.
Well, what about 86?
Yeah, it just, I don't know. Maybe it just didn't hit the same for me
Look at this point.
After seeing those early shows. Boy, I can remember them. Maybe it was that Irving Plaza show right there. The walls just sweating. It was so hot. Oh my God. So obviously, when they played, they would play 3, maybe 4 hardcore, punk songs in a row. And then the band and the crowd just had to have a break.
Yeah.
So, they would,
I Love I Jaw,
bust,
Leaving Babylon.
bust into their reggae set, but everybody needed it.
Sure.
There was no way they could go on with that
Dynamics, right?
level
It's
of
dynamics.
intensity for, more than 12 minutes without having to have a break. But, boy, their musicianship,
Oh yeah,
just incredible.
unparalleled.
Incredible. And HR as a frontman was just manic, intense.
Tragically was manic. Tragically, because when I saw the Bad Brains in 2007, HR was a very, very former visage of what he once was.
Yeah,
Sad to say.
I know he has canceled a lot of his solo engagements, and he's been difficult to work with, which is
Yeah, but I mean,
a shame. But
even before he can't, I just mean from the sense that like he just sort of had this reversal of, well, I mean, part of it has to do with health too, man. Like he just can't do some of that physical shit that he used to do. But it's a lot of factors, a lot of issues. But it's just sad because, I'm sorry to say this, and I've had people from bands shoot laser daggers into my eyes when I've said things like this. But the reality is that I saw the Bad Brains with John Joseph from the Cro-Mags singing at CBGB's, and I had a better time than when I saw with HR, because John Joseph at least, tried to emulate HR as opposed to HR, who was just like standing there smiling, not doing anything. So it was kind of like, I don't know. It was a bummer, man.
Yeah, things change, but at the same time, they have their legacy, and that is, whatever you want to call it, 79 through 85 or 84 or whatever.
I mean, they're technically still together, man. I mean, they technically still do shows. I mean, they haven't done a show in a bunch of years, but I mean, they were doing shows as recent. They had the original singer, Sid McCoy. He sat in for a set with the Bad Brains before he passed away. So,
yeah, time changes everything, but thankfully we have, we have the records, we have in some cases
for sure.
the videos, and to document what was and what was important. Absolutely.
Yeah. Kevin here is the same age as me. He also saw Bad Brains at CB's it's last week. We were the very last generation that got to go to CBGB's before it shut down. The very last. I went to CBGB's the last 3 years of its existence, and then Did you
go to some of the farewell shows there?
I did not. I was living in Chicago at the time, so I missed those. But that's where like I said, that's where I saw T.S.O.L. And I remember when the Dead Boys were doing they did those 2 shows without Stiv. I think Adrenalin O.D. opened for one of those, and who did they have on the other show? Maybe the Nihilistics. But it was the tail end. Can't help. Like, it's just kind of like a bummer when, everything just kind of sort of shut down. All these legendary clubs, I know about them because I read about them.
Yeah.
I get to go to them. You really got to see some really cool shit, man. You really did. So friggin' cool. What about the Damned? I'm just going to keep asking you bands. You're going to be here till fucking midnight. Crazy. Tell me about seeing the Damned.
Boy, I love the Damned. I've always been a big fan. My first Damned show, maybe it was at the Ritz. I'm not sure. I know I did see the Damned's, let me get my hand, farewell show at the Ritz. I think that was in '87. Captain Sensible came out for the encore, buck naked. But I've always been a big fan. The Damned are just amazing in the fact that those first 3 or 4 albums, the change in personnel, the Captain moving from bass to lead guitar,
Yeah, man.
and Brian James's band, his Damn Damn Damn, all of those records are so different, and they all stand on their own, and they're all fantastic. So love the Damned, see them whenever they come around, whenever I can.
Were you at the with the Misfits? Did you see that show?
No. Oh, you mean at the Garden?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was there too.
And what's so crazy is it's the reversal of the 79 Hurrah show, which is awesome, right?
What a mind fuck. Not only they selling out MSG, but they have the fucking Damned opening for that. That was such a what a glorious victory lap. Let me ask you this. I mean, we all grew up hearing about this legendary band that we never thought would reunite, the Misfits. You're one of those dudes who got to see the original band, and and like, in all honesty, I mean, they were terrible live, right? Like, it was just a shit show live.
Well, maybe the sound was muddy, but the intensity and spirit was there. So you did not walk out of a Misfits show disappointed. You walked out sweaty and hoarse because you're singing along for 50 minutes with all those songs. And, some kid is jumping on your shoulders and because you got too close to the stage, and maybe you just missed getting whacked in the head by the bass, by Jerry's bass. No, they were a blast. Probably could they have sounded better with better equipment and maybe an ace sound man? Absolutely. But you didn't walk out of those shows disappointed or not saying you did not have a good time.
What do you remember? What do you remember of Jerry at that time? His stage presence, his energy, any of those guys?
Well, like I said before, those guys were larger than life. They were superheroes. They were wrestlers in the coolest stage clothes that you would ever hope to see anybody in. The imagery was off the charts. To walk in and see the Crimson Skulls on the amps, how freaking cool was that? I mean, just their whole stage presence was amazing. Was any the kids at that show thinking to themselves, the Misfits are going to be playing effing Madison Square Garden in 35 years? Absolutely, no. It's been pretty incredible to see how that band's legacy has grown over the years, and it's at the point of kind of legendary status right now. I mean, the imagery, the Crimson Skull has obviously had incredible staying power. And I guess part of that has, obviously spurred interest in the band. Now, as younger kids have gotten into punk rock and they've heard, let me check out the Misfits, they're going to plug that in their Spotify and they're going to be knocked out. And then when they want to go see what that band looked like, they're going to be knocked out. So you can certainly, I understand how that legacy has grown, but how do we reconcile that? You know what I mean? We've all seen great bands that we think should be bigger than they turned out to be. It's a pretty amazing story.
Kevin actually poses a really great, by the way, thank you, R. King. We'll catch you later, R. King. Kevin poses a really great question. What do you think of this one? Kevin's saying, do you think the Ramones could have sold out MSG now if they were still around? And how would that differ I'm tacking onto that. How does that differ from the Ramones selling out MSG? And I have my own answer, but first let's hear what Dave has to say in his thoughts.
In the proper context, the answer is yes. If the Ramones, say, broke up when they did and maybe played sporadically or not at all, but then announced, you know what, like the Misfits did, we're going to play New York, we're going to play Chicago, we're going to play LA. Could they sell out? And I think they could. What do you think?
So I think that part of the problem is, and it's kind of something that part of the reason why the Ramones hung it up in the first place, and part of what you were saying, even when talking about the Ramones way back when in the late 70s, early 80s, they were a band that you took for granted because they were just always playing. They were always around. They kind of oversaturated themselves. And that was partially because Johnny was like, the only way I'm going to make $1 million is if I tour. I'm touring. That's what his goal was. He talks about in his book, I just need to make $1 million. And the only way I'm going to make $1 million is by playing these shows. So they would book these tours. They'd go out everywhere. And it got to the point, you could go see the Ramones in whatever, like 1987. They pop out of a white van, 15-seat van or whatever, and they're playing some rinky-dink club. This is the legendary Ramones. Nobody gives a shit. It's like whatever. The Ramones hang it up. If the Ramones had not played a single show or done anything at Ramones, like if they didn't do the Remains, which is something that Dee Dee and Marky, they had a cover band in the 90s called the Remains, doing Ramones music. If nobody done nothing, if Joey wasn't doing, well, maybe Joey was doing solo stuff, and everybody remained in good health and whatnot, and they decided to come back 20 years later in 2016, they probably could have sold out Madison Square Garden. For sure, they probably would have made millions and millions and millions of dollars in South America, because if the Ramones were still all alive today, the Ramones are like the Beatles in South America, which is a phenomenon that developed in the 90s, oddly enough.
Well,
so,
they were going to South America, playing those huge festivals, coming back to America, jumping in the van again,
right,
driving to Jersey, playing for 250 people,
yeah,
and headed back to New York. It was business as usual, which was a shame. But like you said, I think if the context was right, I mean, the Ramones' legacy is still very strong, very strong.
Oh yeah, huge. They're larger than life.
So under the right circumstances, like you said, and context, could they, Riot Fest? Absolutely. MSG? I think so. Somewhere in, hockey arena in LA? I think so. So,
I mean, they were getting offers. They were getting $1 million guarantees in the 90s. The Ramones were down in South America. They were offered promoters. They broke up. They retired. I should say they retired. Huge difference between breaking up and retiring. NoFX is retiring. They're not breaking up. They're choosing to retire, which who knows how long it will last. Those guys, and they're doing it on such good terms. I really like the way that they're kind of ending things, at least probably temporarily. I just don't see those guys not doing NoFX. Like NoFX is one of those things I feel like they'll do forever. The Ramones were like, yeah, we're going to hang it up. We're hanging it up now. Right after they hung it up, a promoter was like, we will give you $1 million to come down here and play. And Joey, who had, gotten cancer, he's like, I can't do it. I'm not doing it. Yeah. He said no to Johnny and Marky, who was pissed. Marky was livid with Joey over this. He was like, come on, just do one more show. Apparently the last show was not even the last show. They did other shows. They did secret shows. There were a couple extra. Yeah, there was like, I gotta look it up, but I'm almost positive there were a couple. There were a few additional farewell sort of things. So that whole legendary, again, going back to legendary things, apparently the last time that Joey and Johnny, like, they crossed the stage and bumped into each other in this very passive aggressive sort of way. And then that was it. That was the last. But apparently they played after that in some shape or form. So part of what makes the Misfits reunion so successful, what allows them to sell out Madison Square Garden, what allows them to command $1 million guarantees per show, is the fact that, much like what Dave has been saying, that they, there's this period of time. And again, if you really look at all the shows they played, they didn't play once a year. Everybody I interview says, oh, the Misfits, they played once a year. It's not true. They didn't play once a year. They just sporadically played, and they only played New York once a year. They were constantly, in some way, shape, or form, going out on the road to do something. Whether it was a couple of shows here, a couple of shows, they were always, you just take a look at the thing, the tours, the tours they were doing. But in that same way, Dave is saying, oh, it was like an event. You had to be there. You had to go, or something you didn't want to miss. And now the Misfits have done that again. They have created this demand, which is, believe me, it's diminishing returns, I think, at this point, a little bit. They have created this insane demand that really bubbled up. The final further was coming home, a hometown New York show. They played Jersey, and everybody's like, oh, that's the home show. The Misfits were a New York band. Sure, they played in New Jersey, but they broke out on the late 70s punk scene. They were doing shows at Max's. They did, some CBGB showcase. They were a New York band. So this was their New York hometown show, the Damned opening. Forget about it. Of course. Would the Ramones have done the same? I think they could have, but I don't know if it would have had the same. I don't know if the riff between Johnny and Joey was as epic as the riff between Jerry Only and Glenn Danzig.
Really, I didn't realize it was that.
Oh, dude, listen, I know that it was acrimonious. It was super acrimonious, man. Those dudes hated each other. Scorched Earth hated each other.
Wow.
And the law, they had such an ugly lawsuit in the 90s, and they talked shit about each other so often in the press. It just seemed like green hell would freeze over before the Misfits could ever it would never happen. It would never fucking happen. So for it to happen made that guarantee and just all that stuff we're saying so much higher in demand. And I don't think there's another act out there. Some would say maybe the Cro-Mags. I don't think so, though. I don't think there's any band out there that could quite rival the how epic the reunion of the Misfits is.
So let me ask, are Jerry and Glenn, have they made up at all, or are they put up with each other, or you have any idea where that stands?
All I can say from what I've casually gleaned, and again, I'm not an insider. I don't know jack shit. But by the way, the answer to that, Kevin, is no. It was not. It was on. I forget the name of the imprint. It was not. They left Sire and they had a new label in the 90s, and I forget the name of it, but I don't believe it was on Epitaph. Regarding the Ramones, Adios Amigos. Those dudes are playing together not because they're friends. They're playing each other because. Yes, thank you, Rue. Rue, you're right. It was on Radioactive Records, which they started. Rue is Rue really knows his shit when it comes to the Ramones. He's a Ramones expert.
Thank you, Rue.
Thank you, Rue. Glenn and Jerry, man, they do it for the money. Rightfully so. Like no bones about that. I mean, I don't know what the personal situation is, but I kind of think this is the way I think of it as. I think of it like this. You know how they say two countries that both have McDonald's won't attack each other? I think that's the perfect way to describe Glenn and Jerry. Like, from, again, as someone I don't know anything. I'm just from all the reading that I do and see, you know, um, I'm sure that the money is too good for those guys have a good thing going and the money is too good to stop. They're not going to stop because of a personal animosity. They've somehow managed to get over that. They've gotten to this place where they performed 16 or 17 shows. They're not going to stop, you know. They're going to keep going until they can't make the guarantee anymore, and then they'll probably blow it out and it'll be good. But really,
no reason to kill the golden goose at this point.
Well, I would imagine not. I think that I also think that the pinnacle of what they're doing, this reunion thing, as you know, when a band reunites, look at the Pixies. The Pixies did the reunion thing for about 10 years. And then finally it was like, we've been doing this for 10 years. We either need to put out a record or we need to stop because this is fucking lame. We just keep fucking doing our song, which is, I don't think it's necessarily lame. A band, you know, if a band reunites on occasion to, you know, play the old songs, what's wrong with that? But, you know, to go out, you know, year after year doing the same, you know, doing the Mike Love, you know, Beach Boy fucking thing over and over again. It's just kind of like, it is kind of lame. And so it kind of gets to this point of like, you know, I think personally the Misfits have reached their pinnacle. You know, they're not going to put out a new album. They're just going to keep doing this show or a variation of the show. I think the MSG show in New York is the punctuation. That's it.
Yeah.
That was the be all end all. We saw it. We were there.
That's the icing on the cake.
That was the icing on the cake. It's like, that is it, man. That is it. Like, it's not going to get better than that.
Why did they cancel their Las Vegas show with the Dickies?
There's a lot of rumors flying around. I don't know. There's all sorts of rumors flying around as to why it was exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, personally, my thoughts when I first saw that they had canceled, I was thinking in my head, I wonder if maybe there is some beef there because, like, you know, it's a weird thing to cancel 2 months out from a show that big, you know, with the CJs. Like, that's a big fucking show on New Year's Eve in like Vegas. And
Circle Jerks were on that bill. Jerks and the Dickies were on that bill.
I don't know if the Dickies were, but
maybe that's who I was thinking of. Well, yeah.
I'll tell you, man. Like that was a pretty big show to be like not playing it 2 months out or pulling out, especially with all like the contracts and stuff. So something, I don't know, something must have gone down.
Yeah,
will they be back? I mean, I hope so in some way, shape, or form. You know, I've seen them on the floor a few times, and like I don't really want to I can't most certainly at this moment cannot afford to shell out any more money for floor seats, even though I would want to. And I couldn't see that from the seat, from sitting in a chair. I'd have to be like literally getting my brains knocked out in the mosh pit. Like, what's the point? You know. So I'm happy with the MSG. For me personally, I'm like, okay, MSG, that was good. That's it, man. Kevin saying, no, I mean Ramones had an offer from Epitaph, but instead they broke up. I never heard that. All the bells and whistles, great 90s punk production could have totally revitalized them. Imagine a Ramones album produced by Bill Stevenson. I can totally imagine that. And it would have been fucking amazing. It would have been fucking amazing. There are rumors, Kevin saying, did they ever disclose all their kids? There are rumors. I can't speak to any of them. I don't know. I personally don't know anything, but you know, there's all sorts of, some people saying it's health stuff. Some people are saying it's low ticket sales. I don't think any of it's accurate. I don't know what is the reality. They said they'll be back in 2023, but it'll just be more of the same, man. Like, you know, it's just going to be the same. They're just going to do the same show. It's a great show, but you know, again, it's kind of hard. It's $300 to for floor seats. It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy. I will, Kevin. I will check. We got to wrap this up. Fuck. I wanted to do a 90-minute show, and I just love talking with Dave here. He's just a fucking awesome dude, and want to keep asking him fucking questions. Dave, I want to thank you so much for coming on, and please, I'd love to have you back. I say this to every guest, but it's so true. It's just like when I have a killer good guest to get them back, we feel like we've only barely scratched the surface. I want to talk movies with you, man, because you're such a movie guy. We didn't even talk a single movie, so we got to do that.
Jeff, this has been a total blast. This is all the stuff I love to talk about. So thank you for having me. And anytime you want to have me back, I'd be more than happy to.
We'll do, the thing I've been getting into lately, it's super fun, just doing like top 5 lists, like just top 5 this, and then we go back and forth. It's so much fun. I want to do a film one, so we'll have a film round table, and you got to be on that round table. We'll figure it out. I'll be in touch, and we'll do, we'll go through the whole rigmarole of scheduling, and we'll find something that works, and you'll come back on.
Hey, I know you're a frequent visitor to the Alamo in Yonkers.
Fuck yeah, I am.
So I have never been. I've been to the one in Staten Island quite a bit. Are you going to be at the Faster Pussycat Kill screening, 35 millimeter?
When is that happening?
January 9th. It's a Monday night.
I don't know, but one thing, listen, take my phone number, and anytime you're coming, if you do make a trip to the Alamo in Yonkers, I mean, I'm not, just text me, dude. Like, it's so close to my house. I'm always going to shows. I gotta, because of the season pass. I gotta, if I don't go to a certain number of shows, then it's not financially viable for me to do the season pass. So it's actually kind of, it's a wonderful burden because I love going to the movies so much. But it's like, if I don't make a minimum of 2 movies a month, then like it financially does not make any sense for me to go to have the season pass. So
yeah, check the Yonkers website. They just added a bunch of 35 millimeter screenings in January. So I think I'm going to come out. I think I'm going to come out for that Faster.
Then we will have coffee. We will have to grab coffee, and we'll go see something. I've never seen Faster Pussycat, so I'd be open to that as well.
Oh, cool. I'll send you a message at some point.
Do it. We'll talk, man. All right.
Sure.
I'm gonna say peace and hair grease now. Goodbye, Rue. Rue says thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Rue. Show. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Please come back for another 2 hours, he says, and a big thank you to me. Thank you, Rue, for being the man. Kevin, I will check my Facebook DM in a few minutes. I'm so bad with these inboxes, especially the Facebook one. They just overwhelm me. They fill up. I don't like it. But yeah, I will check that. Trying to think what shows are coming up. Anything? Oh, Kevin, check out the Bad Nerves, man. They are one of my new favorite bands. We just had them on the show. Fucking awesome guys from England. If you're into garage rock, if you like Jay Retard or any of that stuff, you will love the Bad Nerves. Check them out. So just want to champion those guys. And again, Voice of Doom is coming this Sunday, 2:00, Bowery Electric. Check it out. Free show, all ages. All right, now we're really saying goodbye. Peace, hair grease. We'll see you all on the